like to talk to young people because nobody talked to me about any of this. Everything, I mean, we had to grope our way through it, basically. Pun intended.
You're an Amazon, becoming brave and strong, clearly and consciously you see. You're so dykey, how you excite me, how fortunate a female faculty. Oh, gee, I guess it's good for me, H. How heaven.
I loved it. I loved growing up in Israel. I grew up in Israel in the 50s. It was a new country. There was that feeling of rebirth, birth of a nation. It was powerful. I came out in 1973. I had already been very political before then. I had been in, what was then called the New Left, the Students for Democratic Society, and anti-war movements. And then I kind of moved into what was then called women's liberation. It wasn't called feminism yet, but I was very involved, and I'd been going to some demonstrations, like in Manhattan. I went to Brooklyn College. I opened a birth control counseling office, instigated the hiring of a gynecologist on campus, and I took young women for abortions, sort of semi-underground at the time. So they sent this woman to like deal with me. And she right away, she said to me, they sent me, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I want to join with women. I'm done with working with these guys. They don't really get it. She said, I really want to do a big women's festival right here on campus this year. Would I join her? And I said, absolutely yes. And we set up this amazing festival. We showed films. We had women come and do self-defense classes. We had a mother and daughter team come and bring speculums and set up tables where we all looked at ourselves for the first time, because you couldn't even see what a woman looked like in most of the biology books. These were completely the wildest things back then. And she wrote me a poem, slipped a little note in my pocket, and said the poem was for you. I'll never forget, she touched my shoulder. It was this feeling inside, like coming home, like, oh, all these things that hadn't made any sense to me before suddenly made sense. I didn't come out to my parents at that time because I knew that it was not going to be a good situation. A couple of years later, I came out to my brother, who then looked at me and said, me too. Up and down and laughing, and everything was great. Together, we opened a lesbian print shop in 1975. And it's really, I have to say, amazing work. We taught ourselves how to print. We taught ourselves the entire industry. We taught other women the business. My shop was for women only. Not printing, I mean, we would print for anyone, but the people who worked there, because we want to develop our own power and our own knowledge in this field. And it would have been easier to go find a guy who already knew how to print, but I hired women who didn't know how to print and taught them printing so that they can then go on and do it. And other print shops around the country were doing the same thing, and publishers were printing only women's because men could get printed anywhere. Why should we publish men's books? The whole publishing industry could have been called men's publishing. And we did women's publishing. They didn't let us into theirs. We did our own. We didn't do theirs. My parents had dreams, and those dreams depended on me and my brother. And we were not going to fulfill those dreams. And they could not switch over. It was really, really difficult for them. And that's when I decided I needed to leave New York. It was impossible. It was too stressful. And so that's when I moved to California. I felt like I'd left my baby. My print shop was my baby, and I couldn't imagine what I was going to do without it. But it was over, it was time, and I had visited California the year before. I got here right as Mayor Moscone and Harvey Milk were murdered. I must have been here like a month or two. It was a nightmare of a time. I couldn't get a job initially because they weren't allowing women into printing. I finally put my foot down. I went to this really fancy printing place. They told me they didn't hire women. And I said, you know what? I'll just work for you for a day for free. And then we'll talk. Don't say yes or no. Just see my work. And I got hired that day. So I felt pretty proud. And I became a master stripper. So now I had time. I just worked a regular job. So I started going to music festivals and found them just amazing. I just loved it. And there was a West Coast Music Festival, and I signed up to work on that. And that's where I met Nan, and we got involved through working on the festival. And before I knew it, she was pregnant. It really went pretty fast. She wanted to have a baby. I thought, I'll help her have a baby. Why not? I had really not thought about being a parent myself. I'd given that up when I came out. And we had a baby. And I was in heaven. I was thrilled. I just never thought I'd be that lucky. And we had a girl, which we really wanted. And she was adorable and wonderful. And I love being a mommy. I began to see that even though I'd always said it, the personal is political, it became very political for me. Being out, raising a child as a lesbian, not trying to hide it, not trying to pretend she had a dad somewhere else, was very educational and changed a lot of people's minds, I think. In 1983, not too many people had ever met a child born to gay parents. It wasn't very unusual. Now a lot of our children are grown, and you can see most of them are really good and well-adjusted children. They were all very wanted. Nobody had a baby by accident. Everyone who has a baby in our community really, really wants it and has to go through a lot of, hoops to get one. My parents, when they found out I was having a baby, my mother's exact words were, "You're not doing that child any favors by bringing her into this world like this." Of course, eventually my mother fell in love with her and adores her to this day. Just as crazy about her. And maybe has understood that she doesn't seem to have been harmed in any way, shape, or form. The hardest part for her is having to deal with two Jewish mothers, not the lack of a father. But we were not religious at all. My family is not religious. We did not really celebrate because the celebration was around us and we celebrated culturally. When I came to America, I was 10, I saw a very different thing. And then I latched onto Judaism like it was home. I missed home, I missed family. The Jewish culture became, Israel in America for me. But it was very different. It was more based on religion. I didn't know anything about religion. Nobody ever taught me. I was too young to have studied religion in Israel. My parents didn't get to study. They were in refugee camps when they would have been studying. So they just knew what they picked up, around. And it wasn't really until about 20 years ago, after my dad died, and I had gone, in Judaism, you go every day of the first 30 days, you go to synagogue and say a prayer as a sign of respect. And I did that for my dad. And I wound up going to an Orthodox synagogue because they're the only ones who pray every day. And I started listening, and I was kind of interested. And I decided to go and check out Shar Zahav. I met Rabbi Angel, and that drew me in. She drew me in. When I joined Shar Zahav, I decided to really check out what the Bible had to say. And I found that I liked a lot what it had to say, but I still didn't see how I could fit in as a lesbian. And then this other rabbi came, and she has a whole analysis. And her whole analysis, in very shortcut, is that not only does Judaism have room for me, it needs me. It's queer thinking, revolutionary people like me that kept Judaism alive all these years. If Judaism hadn't had the mechanism for change that it needed, it would have died when the temple was destroyed, and there would have been no Judaism. I really related to this. It made so much sense to me. And I got really excited, and I really wanted to study. And then I told her that her teaching was revolutionary and she had to teach everyone. And we started this group and we started teaching, and now we teach thousands of people. And we have a home in Chicago, and we have camps all summer. And it's really grown into a really, really big movement. And we're training rabbis and teachers because it's very inclusionary. It makes room for trans people, intersex people, queer people, straight people, non-binary people, asexual people, it's open. Why? Because it's a religion to live by. It's something to help us live, to find a meaning in everybody's life. When you read it that way, then all that other stuff doesn't make sense. We call our yeshiva traditionally radical because we don't write our own Bible. We take the actual Bible so people can relate to it, and we help interpret it in new ways. So the interpretation is radical, but it's very traditional text. And that's what's shocking to people, because we can talk on the same plane. We're not talking a different language. We're talking the same language, different interpretation. And that's really been revolutionary for me. And that's my life's work now, around Judaism, very much so. And very, very, I get excited all the time. We're growing all the time. I see amazing things happening.